Salve galera, eu sou o Daga e hoje estou aqui com o Mr. Billy Sheehan para falar sobre o equipamento que ele está usando com o Sons of Apollo. Hi Mr.
How are you?
I'm fine, and you?
Okay, very good, thank you.
Can you tell us about your gear? First about your instruments, what bass are you using now for Sons of Apollo? I saw you were using a double neck.
Yes, yeah, I'm using a double neck Yamaha Attitude bass. It has two necks because they are tuned differently. Many of the, all of the Sons of Apollo songs are done in a low tuning. So I don't like a 5 or 6 string bass so much because my hands are used to 4 strings to pluck. So instead of getting an extra low B string here, I move my regular strings like that, lose the G string, so it's B, E, A, D.
It's like a 5 string but without
the 5th string, without that top string, or a 6th string without the top string. So it enables me to still use the same techniques for my right hand, which are used to 4 strings. And also the 5 string, it kind of flattens out too much, and I need a curve on those strings. Just like a violin has a curve on its string, so the bow will hit this string, then that string, then that and that. I need that curve same way. On a 5 string it's too flat, on a 6 string it's way too flat. So I can't, it's harder for me to do. I can do it, I've used 5 string, I've used 6 string. Just Take My Heart by Mr. Big, that was 6 string bass.
6 string bass?
Yeah.
Really?
I used 6 string on the menu records when I had to, but now I like the 4 string strung B-E-A-D. It's a double neck, one neck is normal, and the other one, the high one, and the lower one is B-E-A-D. But it's very heavy, very, very heavy.
And do you use a fretless bass on Sons of Apollo or not?
No fretless. I've only used fretless maybe I used it on the Skyscraper record with David Lee Roth for 1 song. I think maybe I've recorded with fretless maybe 4 or 5 other times, but it's just not my thing. I've played the same bass for 50 years, and it's 4 strings with frets. So that's what I do.
And about the amp?
Well, I'm using Hartke amps, Hartke speakers, the HD speakers, they're brand new, and the LH1000 amplifiers. But the LH1000 amplifier doesn't do much at all. It's just an amp. There's no fancy, there's no effects, there's no nothing. It's volume, bass, middle, treble, done. It's nothing else.
Secret.
So it's good though, because in front of the amps I'm using the Line 6 Helix. Which is the secret. It's a spectacular collection of anything you want, anywhere, in any position, with any in, any out, any kind of configuration you can imagine. You can do it with the Helix. So years ago I had a preamplifier called a Pierce, and it was customized for me by Dan Pierce, the guy who invented. So what I did, for the first time, I got the Helix LT, which is a pretty awesome device. They actually modeled my original Pierce preamp, which is the one I had from Dan Pierce from 1978. And I've had that since the late 70s. And I used that all through Talus, through David Lee Roth, through Mr. Big, through every band I was in. And it was just an amazing sounding preamp. So they took my original Pierce preamp and they computer modeled it. At Line 6 they do it a very special way. They actually, you have a circuit board with all the components on it. Normally they model by taking input and output and then computer make a model of how that works. But at Line 6 they take every component and they model each component. And then they combine them in software. Then they check that against the original. They adjust. And it's a very elaborate and super accurate way to model. So the Pierce preamp in the Helix sounds perfect.
Really, do you feel any difference between the hardware and the software?
If you blindfolded me, I probably couldn't tell. It's really great.
With the Pierce, I had fluidity and freedom, and I could do my thing, and I never thought about it much until I didn't have it.
Plus, it's got many great compressors because we fly so much. Carrying all that gear is expensive and it gets broken. I mean, I would travel with a $4,000 compressor because they sound great, but it's going to get smashed. And it's a lot of money. But there is a $4,000 compressor inside the Helix, and it sounds great. So it helps us really to get everything we want, be able to fly in, and that way in Brazil or in Indonesia or in Germany, I have everything I need all the time. So the Helix has been a wonderful help to me. And mostly guitar players have been using the Line 6 Helix or the Fractal Axe Effect or the Kemper. They're all fantastic. I prefer the Helix, but the Kemper and the Fractal are great too. But now bass players are discovering them because because there's SVTs, there's acoustic amps, old amps from the 70s are all modeled and they're all in there. It sounds fantastic.
Okay. And do you like to use any effects?
Not too much. I just use the natural distortion that happens when you turn my preamp up, and a little compression. A little bit of compression. For bass, compression is probably the number one effect you use. Even when you go in the studio and go direct, there's usually some compression on the track. Now that I have the Helix saw, I'm experimenting with a few other effects, like I got a pitch up and a pitch down. I don't use them much, and I got a rotating speaker, cool sound.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah,
so you are not using nothing, any effects in here in Sons of Apollo?
I will use a little bit of octave up, octave down. So my bass has two outputs, a high output and a low output. So the low output gets the octave down, and the high output gets the octave up. So it's this giant sound. It's 2 octaves of low and 2 octaves of high, and it's quite massive. And the rotating, I set it up today. I haven't used it much because I'm still, with the Helix, I'm still experimenting. There's so much in it. It's hard to make a decision. And I still haven't had a chance to take the Helix, go into a rehearsal room, a big room, by myself with my amp, turn it up loud and figure out all the sounds. Because when you're listening quietly at home and getting sounds, it might sound really good, but then when you turn it up, you gotta build your sounds loud because they change character when you get them very loud.
And it sounds different with the band playing together.
Exactly right.
So thank you very much, Mr. Billy.
My pleasure. All right.
Galera, valeu, Mr. Billy Sheehan.